Welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. And we do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, neighbors, anyone caring for someone else. My name is Katie Muirhead, she, her pronouns, and I will be your moderator for today. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. While we meet on a virtual platform with people joining us from across the province and internationally even, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home. The land I'm on today is most often identified to include the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Chippewa Ojibwe peoples. This area is part of the Lake Simcoe-Nottawasaga Purchase, or Treaty 18, which was signed in 1818. And today, descendants of this group make up the Chippewa Tri-Council with communities based at Georgina Island, Rama, and Beausoleil First Nations. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land where you are. And if you're not familiar with that, you can find an interactive map that tells you which traditional territory your city or town sits on at native-land.ca. Our webinar today is called Building Resilience in Times of Uncertainty. In this webinar, we will learn about the 5 core traits for resiliency and stress systems management. We will explore behavior change as a means of building and maintaining stronger work-life balance. And I am so pleased to introduce all of you to our speaker today, Dr. Robyne Hanley-Defoe. Robyne is a multi-award-winning psychology and education instructor who specializes in resiliency, navigating stress and change, leadership, and personal wellness in the workplace. Described as transformational, engaging, and thought-provoking, Robyne's keynotes provide practical strategies grounded in global research and case studies that help foster resiliency within others and ourselves. Welcome, Robyne.
Thank you, Katie, and everyone. I am honored to be here today to talk about all things caregiver resiliency and wellness. So I would just like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this opportunity to connect. And just so you know, my intention is to do some information sharing, and then we'll have lots of time for question and answers at the end. And please feel free to ask me anything. Don't be shy. I welcome whatever is top of mind for each and every one of you. So thank you for joining us, and let's get started. So the first thing that you should be seeing on your screen is going to be my contact information that we'll share in the we'll share that in the chat. And to get us started, I do just want to pause and recognize, and I appreciate Katie did our land acknowledgement, but I would like to acknowledge that the land in which I live upon and the land in which I'm joining you from is land of the Anishinaabe First Persons of the Mississauga. This space is known as Peterborough, Ontario, and I am a settler here, and I'm doing my best to listen and to learn. Now, to get us started, one of the areas that I like to kind of warm us up to these ideas, we call these noting exercises in education and psychology, and it's to pause and ask, what's the big idea? And the big idea that I want to share with us as a community today is this notion that, just because we carry it well, that doesn't mean it's not heavy. And I appreciate that when we are navigating many different challenges and difficult seasons, it comes at a cost. And one of the things that I want to think about is, how do we ensure that we are well equipped so we can continue to be in our roles as caregivers, but making sure that we are okay in the process. So we'll explore some of that today. Now, one of the things that I often hear about when I'm talking with people is this idea about, life feels hard, and there's lots of dimensions and reasons why life feels hard. But I just wanted to remind each and every one of you that life is hard not because you're doing it wrong. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes we think that there's a right way to do things, even a right way to do resiliency and wellness. The reality is that there will always be variations. So what works for one might not work for the other, but my invitation is to hold that space for yourself, that we're doing the best that we can with the tools that we have. And I appreciate the work is challenging and it's also rewarding. It can be both. There can be dual truths. It can be hard and we can still appreciate it. So we'll explore some of those ideas in our time together. Now, when I started studying resiliency, one of the questions that I asked was, I wanted to know really like, what is the difference when people are faced with difficult situations or difficult challenges? Why is it that some people kind of like give up or stay stuck or maybe not do the work? And other people find a way to get up, that they keep persisting, they keep showing up. I wanted to know what makes someone resilient like that. How do they face so bravely these big challenges? What I expected to find in the literature and when I started doing this research was things that you've probably heard of before about like, maybe it's about like a toughness or mental discipline, or maybe some people are just more hardy than others or have more grit. What I came upon was that there was actually something more to it. There's something bigger than that. And that's what I want to tell you about today. Now, I have named what I came upon as this idea of everyday resiliency. So this isn't about this idea that it's one time or it's just one particular thing that we have to show up for. It's the daily practices. And resiliency is very much those daily practices, how we keep moving forward, how do we keep doing the work, even though sometimes we don't feel like it, or maybe we're spent or tired. Now, when I think about what makes everyday resiliency possible, what we came upon is that there was actually 5 core pillars. So when we imagined and looked at, okay, what are people leaning into for that strength, for that capacity to move forward? We heard about these 5, and I'll tell you about each and every one of these pillars. Now, the first one is a sense of belonging. We need a home team. A home team and people in our corner is how we derive what's called psychological safety. This is absolutely crucial. Now, what we know is that for some people, it could be a family system that gives us that psychological safety, that sense of belonging. And for others, it could be your chosen family. Even participating in an event like this, you're coming together as community. Belonging, being part of community is so very important. Now, when I work with caregivers from all different backgrounds and all different forms of caring, we often talk about the fact that it can be very isolating, that everyone else seems from the outside look, it seems like everyone else's life makes more sense, or it's just more, it's easier. And when you think about the load that you work with, it sometimes is a bit overwhelming. And it's so important that we connect, that we talk and we reach out. We have that sense of belonging. It's crucial. Now, the second area we see in resiliency is this idea of perspective. And perspective is often thought about as this like intellectual process, the way we interpret the world or our attitude or how we think and problem solve. Now, that's one dimension of resiliency in terms of perspective, but we also need to take into consideration our heart, how our heart is aligned with our head. So sometimes the greatest delta can be between our head and our heart. Intellectually, we might know something, but we haven't addressed the feelings yet. The feelings aren't quite ready. So honoring the fact that we want an alignment with our head and our heart, getting on the same page. Now, how we do that is to really operate from our value system, knowing what matters most and making what matters most matter most. So it's keeping what matters most top of mind, not getting pulled into all these other distractions and the noise. That makes a difference. Now, the third variable we see in my work is the role of acceptance. Now, I think this sometimes gets misunderstood. And what I mean by acceptance is this idea that we figure out what are our controllables. Right? That's the starting point. We decipher, where do I have impact? What can I control? What do I not have control of? And then we ask, when we figure out what we can't change or can't control, how do we make that daily decision to coexist with it? Honoring and just understanding that this is part of something that we have to carry. Doesn't mean we have to like it, doesn't mean we have to get over it, but it's the idea that we're going to carry this with us. And I often use this example that, at some days we can just persist, we just push through, we find a way, we just keep doing the work. Other days we might have to pivot. We might have to ask for help, level up or skill up, or figure out a new way of doing something. And there's going to be other days when we feel like we just have to punt it down the field and we'll try again tomorrow. But the idea with this acceptance is we don't want to get stuck. And one of the tools that we use to explore, if somebody's really kind of stuck with acceptance, is if they're asking a lot of why questions. Why is this happening? Why did that unfold the way it did? Why questions really are a sign that we're really trapped or stuck somewhere, versus those questions about what do I do next? Where do I go from here? What's my next right move? Those are questions that keep us moving forward. And that's the hope that we find the ability to make the next right decision. We don't have to solve everything, but we need to know that we have to make that next right decision. We don't want to get stuck. Now, the fourth variable we talk about in my work is the role of hope, choosing to live hope-filled. Now, I appreciate, especially when we're in caregiving roles, it's sometimes hard to hold hope. We get discouraged, we get frustrated. There's a lot of disappointments, and there's also, of course, bright blessings, and there's positive pieces as well. And it's something that our hope sometimes gets a little bit battered. We have to live in hope with others. And I recall learning about hope in a really significant way when I was actually working with some of members of the Canadian Armed Forces. And they were talking about how they'd been away on a deployment and now they were back. And I was curious about, what do, soldiers in those roles, what do they look forward to? What do they hold on to? What are they thinking about now that they're home? And I asked the first soldier, and he kind of candidly shared that before he had deployed, that he had actually started painting his kitchen, but he only got half done. So what he was going to do now that he was home was finish painting his kitchen, which I thought was interesting. The second soldier said that he had actually started a house renovation, only did some of the hardwood floor, had to do a few more rooms. That's what he was going to do. Okay, this kind of felt peculiar because all of these soldiers had these half-finished house projects. So I did ask their lieutenant, and I said, "Sir, what's that about?" And what he said was so significant. He said, "Doc, those soldiers are leaving half-finished house projects as signs of hope for their families, that they're coming home. They're leaving evidence on the ground that there is still work to be done here and that they're going to come back and finish it." I asked that very weathered lieutenant next. I said, "Sir, you're proposing that hope is a choice." And he said, "Robyne, hope will be a choice. And if we want to be of service, we have to stay hope-filled. We need to protect the morale of the people who are counting on us. We have to hold hope." Now, I appreciate, again, it's not easy to do, but we know it makes a difference. How we hold hope is we look for it. We seek it out. We listen and be on the kind of lookout for those good news stories where we see encouragement, where we get that sense of faith or trust that come what may, we're going to figure this out, that we're well equipped. So hope matters, and living in hope with others is powerful for caregivers. It's powerful for our resiliency. Now, the fifth variable we see about resilient practices is actually this kind of a bit of a wild card. It's this idea of humor. It's an idea of play and moments of merriment, pockets of peace and joy. They actually help get through difficult seasons. Now, what we know is that is actually a form of release when we can actually hold just a little bit of that idea of joy, even in dark times. And our biology actually sets us up for success here. So, for example, when you laugh, your body releases this natural tranquilizer. So for this moment in time, your pain receptors are blocked, which allows you to catch your breath. It gives you just that little reprieve. It just lightens it ever so slightly, so then you can keep going. Now, on the similar kind of idea of this, there's research that actually shows people who swear actually live longer. Who knew? Some of us might be immortal. The idea there, though, is that we're letting things flow through us. We're not brewing or bottling everything up. It's important that we have release. And especially in our roles as caregivers, you are giving, giving, and giving, which is extraordinary. It is a gift to be able to be in these positions, but we have to make sure that we're also receiving. We have to make sure that we are meeting our needs, that we are okay. We're having those little moments of release, those moments of reprieve, because that gives us the capacity for the stamina and the endurance that we need to keep showing up. So the next one we did talk about hope. And the next piece that I wanted to talk to you about is this idea of humor and this idea that we actually need to have these moments where we have these releases so we can have just these moments of reprieve. And even in difficult seasons, difficult environments, we still have to make place and hold space for joy and merriment and play. These things are crucial because they give us the stamina and the endurance to be able to persist and to keep moving forward. Now, what's interesting, and I'm not sure if I caught this before we got disconnected, but it's a biological tool. So for example, when you laugh, your body releases this natural tranquilizer. So for that moment in time, your pain receptors are blocked, and it allows you time to catch your breath, to have that reprieve. Along the same vein, we know, for example, people who swear live longer. Who knew? But what we know is it's this idea that it flows through us, that we don't get stuck. Now, what I wanted to share with you is how these 5 areas work together to create this constellation of things that we can lean into when seasons are difficult or when we're feeling really depleted. And what we know is that resiliency takes many forms, and we move through different experiences. And really, there's a season for all of it. There's going to be times when we're feeling depleted and tired. There's going to be times when we rally, we adapt, we find our next way to move forward. And the way that we describe that in our research is this idea that we go through these phases of declining, we adapt, we reclaim, ultimately we rise. We're able to push forward. Now, one of the areas I wanted to share with you about is actually what's going on right now, that we're talking about this idea about reentry readiness. And I think it's so important when we think about all of the competing roles that caregivers are navigating, especially in light of the current global health situation. And as in many places, the world's starting to open up again. And I just wanted to let folks know there's this idea that we talk about that's called reentry readiness. And I use the analogy of traffic lights and the idea that some people are, when it comes to reentry and trying to kind of figure out what's next and how we move forward, they're very much green lighters. They're excited, they're eager, they're ready to go. But then other people might be what we consider yellow lighters, and they're just feeling a little bit nervous. They're not quite ready yet for things to go into another familiar. I often say it's not a new normal, it's what we're familiar with. And we're about to create a new familiar with whatever's on the horizon. And there's also going to be red lighters. And this is the idea that people are nervous. They're afraid of kind of the next steps. And maybe there's a lot of reason why, as maybe you're looking after someone who might not be able to, might be at risk. So we have to honor that everyone's in different places and holding different spaces. So especially for caregiving, I just wanted to really acknowledge that it's okay that we're on kind of unstable ground right now. We're not 100% sure what's our next right move. It's a lot when we think about the current landscape. Now, there's one really big idea that I find extremely helpful when I'm working with caregivers to think about, and this is the idea about what really gets in the way, what really precludes us from practicing our resiliency and looking after ourselves. So I want to tell you a wee bit about this idea about a barrier. And what I'm really seeing in my work, and again, I work with people all around the world, is that our stress, our stress levels are really what's starting to get in the way. Now, I want to talk about stress in a different way. Okay. Not just that try to reduce your stress, because that's not very practical. And what you're seeing here on your screen is actually the Yerk-Dodson human performance stress curve. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, and don't worry, there's only one bell curve in this whole presentation. The reason I'm showing you this is because it shows us the relationship about what happens when we have stress and what it does to our behavior. So this is the stress management system I want to tell you about. Now, stress actually is very important for us. We need stress. We actually our bodies will make this hormone called cortisol to give us energy. That's the interesting part. Stress and that response of cortisol, it gives us energy. It gives us focus. It's this stuff that kind of propels us forward. But unfortunately, if there's too many demands, there's too many areas we feel helpless, if there's too much overwhelm, what unfortunately happens is that instead of having all this energy, it starts to actually deplete us. And we transition into what's called distress. And when we're in distress, this is that place of fatigue. And this is exhaustion. This is where we're on this, slippery slope to burnout. And burnout is so real. It is this depletion physically, emotionally, intellectually, even spiritually, where we're so spent. And what's so important is that we honor that we need to make sure to address it. Left unattended, this is what leads us to be unwell. This is what depletes our capacity for resiliency when we're not addressing that distress, that place. And you know what it feels like. It doesn't feel good. It feels too much, too heavy. You're not showing up how you want to. You're feeling really, really overwhelmed with what's going on. So we want to talk about some tools on what do we do about that? If that's where you are, if you're feeling like this is too much, where do we go from here? So I want to share with you some research-informed tools. These are what we see in the research help people when they're carrying a lot. Now, the first big idea I have for you here is called emotional regulation. And this is a game changer when it comes to working with our systems. All right. This is working with our biology to manage the pressure and the demands on our lives. Now, we have these three systems. The first one's our drive system. This is like get things done, show up, deliver, be on point. You know all about your drive system. It's well activated for each one of us. Now, we also carry around this threat system. It's kind of like a fire alarm that goes off in our head and our heart that lets us know about danger. Now, what's interesting is that we usually see there's three kind of responses that when we're feeling activated in our threat system, you've probably heard about like the fight or the flight. We also know that sometimes it's a freeze. We don't even know what to do next. We're like almost like paralyzed in this moment. And then there's another area that's not often talked about, but I think it's really relevant to our conversation. It's also something called fawning behavior. Fawning behavior is a stress response where we just kind of like go along with it. We just kind of acquiesce, where it's like, okay, that's fine. I'll do it anyway. I'll just do it by myself, right? We kind of take the hit. Now, why I want to tell you about the fawning behavior is the research shows that that behavior is very common in caregiving because we're not receiving, we're not letting our needs be met. We're so mindful of the other person or the other people we're supporting that we start to kind of just not look after ourselves. And that leads into something that's called self-neglect, where we just don't look after ourselves. But we'll talk about how to address that. But before we get there, I want to talk about the other system, which is your soothing system. Each and every one of us has a soothing system. It's in our brain. It's a little message that communicates to our nervous system that we are safe, that we are doing the best that we can, and we're doing the work. Now, what's interesting, there's many different ways to activate your soothing system, but the most readily available is actually through your breath. Just that deep inhalation in and that slow exhale out. 3 paced breaths is enough to send your brain the message that you're safe. We need to make sure we're even just present in this moment. Now, if you're like me and kind of like forget to breathe, or you're just always on the go, that's not something that's top of mind, I want to offer you this tool. It's a visualization exercise, and it's called birthday cake breathing. That's right, birthday cake breathing. And this is how it works. What you do, if you notice you're feeling a bit worked up or just kind of in a bad headspace, I want you to pause. I want you to imagine your birthday cake. And then I want you to take a deep inhalation in. And then I want you to blow out your birthday candles. Just have that little moment where you can capture peace. Full disclosure, a wee while ago, I was feeling really worked up. And I thought to myself, this is when people should birthday cake breathe. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to try it. So I was doing my birthday cake breathing just as one of our 3 teenagers came through the kitchen, and my youngest came through. We have 3 of them, and the youngest came in, and he said to me, he's like, "Mom, your birthday cake breathing." He was excited because he recognized I was doing this birthday cake breath. And I said, "Yes, Jax, I'm feeling really worked up." And then Jax watched me do a few breath cycles, and then he started to laugh. And I said, "Son, that's probably not your best choice. Like, why are you laughing at your mother right now?" And he's like, "Mama, I am so sorry." He's like, "I just can't get over how many candles are on your birthday cake." He's like, "Wow." He's like, "And Mom, when did you lose your chill?" And you know what? He was absolutely right. There's a lot of candles on that birthday cake, and I had lost my chill. I had just been so dysregulated for so long that I forgot what it felt like to be in that place of groundedness, being in that place, that precious place where you have enough spaciousness, where you can react in a way that's actually more of a response. Because I want you to be able to respond and not react. Reacting usually gets us into trouble, and it's driven by our threat system. I want you to be able to really respond. Now, when we think about where we go with this, like how do we bring in more balance? How do we bring this idea of our wellness interwoven with our caregiving? I wanted to introduce to you the wellness factors. And what's interesting, often when we think about wellness, we really think about physical wellness. We think about sleep, nutrition, exercise, and the absence of disease. But wellness is bigger than that. It's broader. There's more depth and breadth to how we can feel. And I often encourage people to explore the other realms, even intellectual wellness, being curious, growing, learning. Being here right now is a practice in intellectual wellness, learning and being part of community. Your emotional wellness, your thoughts, they need a safe place to land in your mind. This idea about caring and comfort, it's important. Social, again, community, this idea of being connected is so important to who we are. Our environment, as well as spiritual, even financial and occupational. There's other realms in which we can practice looking after ourselves. It doesn't always have to just come down to that sleep and exercise and nutrition. Although they're important, they don't have to be the only areas. So what does this look like in practice? I always want to make sure that people have strategies and tools when we go through this work that might be a different approach for them, might be new. Now, I refer to these affectionately as wise self-care practices. It's not good, better, and best. It's trusting your intuition. What is it that you need? Now, I've curated a list here of some of what we've come upon in the research as highly effective strategies. There's wisdom, there's knowledge behind these. And this isn't by any means, you have to do all of it. They're just invitations. They're ideas of where you could maybe get curious about things that you might want to explore. And these are in no particular order, but I'll share these with you with that invitation to think about what speaks to you, what might carry that load for you. Clarity of values. Living in your values is a form of self-care. It's the time spent outside of our values that actually erodes our confidence. It erodes the human sense of condition, like our human condition, your sense of self. If you want to really practice wellness, you want to make sure you're living your values. So I can give you an example. I was working with a professional woman who is also a caregiver, and she was also trying to navigate work. And she said to me, Robyne, I'm just feeling so out of sorts. I'm depleted. And she said, I'm trying to go for runs. I'm trying to eat well, but she's like, nothing is working. I'm not getting any rest. So we did an exercise where we explored her values. I'm like, what matters most to you? What do you stand for? What speaks to you? And she said, I really want to be a present parent for my kids. I really want to be showing up for my kids. And I said, okay, what has that looked like recently? And she said, Robyne, I just keep shooing them out of the way. I just keep putting them in front of TV, shooing them out of the way because I'm trying to caregive for a parent and I'm trying to get my work done. She goes, I just feel like I'm disappointing my kids. So the invitation I offered that woman was, you don't need to run. You don't need yoga. Your invitation, I said, is I want you to pick up those wee ones, pick up your little toddlers, and I want you to cuddle them and watch a bunch of episodes of Paw Patrol. I want you just to have that little pile up, hold them tight, spend time with them. And I said, that is going to fill up your bucket. That is going to make you feel better. Doing more things away from them won't make you feel better if the values aren't in alignment. So again, honoring that you know what's best for you. You know what's going to fill up that bucket, trusting your intuition. Another example I can share with you on wise self-care practices is to preload your self-care. If you know you're going into a difficult day or a difficult week or a difficult season, ensure that you do your self-care first. You don't have to wait until you're depleted to then try and do your self-care. I want you to do it first thing. Make sure that you're filling up your bucket, that you are feeling grounded and well, so then you can continue to do the good work. Often what happens is we do the good work and then try to do recovery. It doesn't work that way. We can do it first. Another little idea I have here for you is called day mapping. And how this one works is this. How this one works is you actually take, I use a notebook. So I use a notebook. You could also even just use like a Post-it note or a device. And before you start your day, I want you to actually put your columns, make 3 columns on your sheet of paper. And in column number 1, you can write your to-do list. What are those things that you have to get done today? Those key deliverables that you have to do. And then on column number 2, all right, this is the game changer. I want you to write your to-be list. Your to-be list. How do you want to be today? Do you want to be patient? Do you want to be present, kind, even approachable, grounded, whatever that is? It's the idea that you set the intention that this is how I want to feel today. Don't leave that up to chance. Don't wait and see what the world has to offer you to decide if you're going to have a good day. We need to set that intention. It's the idea of really kind of having those good feeling thoughts, putting in place how it is you want to be. And column number 3, you can have so much fun with this one. Column number 3 is your not to-do list. What are you not going to do today? Really getting behind this idea that what we do and don't do is so crucial to our wellness. And for me, I can give you this example. I'll actually read it to you. On my not to-do list today, it says here, Robyne will not drink a cold cup of coffee. Yeah. And you're probably thinking, Robyne, how does that have anything to do with self-care? If you find yourself at 1 o'clock drinking the coffee you poured at 8 o'clock in the morning, chances are you're moving too quick. You're not taking just those little moments of comfort. So again, just making sure we're setting ourselves up for success. And it doesn't have to be radical. Even just having that hot cup of coffee, taking that moment is a form of self-care. It is looking after your needs in that moment. So having a not to-do list is helpful as well. Now, here's another tip for a strategy you can think about. It's called bookending your day. This is how this one works. What you do is when you wake up, you actually spend just a few minutes before you are ready and on task for everyone else. Just spend a few minutes with yourself and really make up your mind what kind of day you're going to have. Can you put things in your morning where you feel active and alert and ready? It's this kind of idea that we have to kind of coach ourselves into how we're going to feel today, how we're going to show up. Again, stuff doesn't just happen by accident. We want to make sure we're setting ourselves up. So again, maybe it's just a quick little walk around the block, or maybe it's just listening to a podcast, or maybe it's just having that cup of coffee or that tea or whatever it is, just to give you that little bit of a break before your big day starts. And then on the other side of that practice of bookending, it's closing your day out strong. It's signing off at your end of the day, actually doing routine or ritual or rhythm that welcomes sleep, that welcomes restoration. So tying up those mental loose ends, quieting the mental chatter so you can actually get some rest. And I often talk to persons who struggle with sleep, this idea that before you go to sleep, you really need to hold peace. You have to be able to hold peace in your heart before you get a good night's sleep. If we're still going through all of the things of the day or planning or tomorrow, we're just putting ourselves in that place of this kind of scarcity mindset where we don't have enough time, we don't have enough energy, we don't have enough resources. We need to go to bed with a sense of sufficiency that come what may, we're going to figure it out. But now it's time to rest. So bookending is a way to think about it. Other practices we could explore would be movement practices, moving because it feels good, not because you're trying to like hate yourself healthy. That's not the idea. Move because it feels good. Connecting with nature. Nature is a gift. Simply getting outside and getting fresh air. 20 minutes outside actually dramatically decreases your cortisol. Just 20 minutes outside. Getting outside, being in nature is a way to recalibrate, a form of self-care. And the last one I have for you here, especially as caregivers, is this idea about your boundaries. And I know you've probably heard all about boundaries. I want to share with you my approach to boundaries is different in the sense that boundaries is often talked about as trying to keep people out, right? Creating these boundaries to make sure that we're safe. I want you to think of your boundaries as ways that you protect your peace. How do I protect my peace? What life-enhancing system of yeses and nos am I going to put into place to protect my peace? That's what boundary setting is. Now, that might take the form of what we call non-negotiables. Now, non-negotiables are things like, you know what, I can give you an example. So with email, I have to check my email in the evenings, but one of my non-negotiables is that there's actually places in the house I don't check work email. There are areas of refuge that I can go to. So for example, I don't check it in the children's bedrooms or the kitchen. There are places where it's actually a place where we don't bring in that worry, bring in those marching orders, so to speak, that come in with email. So again, knowing what works for you is a way of practicing your self-care. And ultimately, it's to go for the feeling. What is it that you want to feel? If you're feeling really tired, your self-care is going to be the rest. Or maybe it is that walk outside to maybe get that second wind or some more energy. If you're feeling disconnected from your values, how do you get back into your values? Those are going to be ways that really serve you well. Now, the last idea I wish to share with you before we go to Katie and your question and answer time is the thing that I refer to in my research as lighthouses. Now, lighthouses to me are these symbols. It's this metaphor that represents clarity, focus, guidance. How do we know what's our next right move? And what's interesting is lighthousing is this way of actually getting that clarity and focus. It's knowing how to pull ourselves into what matters most. Now, as a little digression, the reason I have such an affinity to lighthouses and chose to use lighthouses in my research is because my family actually immigrated to Canada from Scotland. And my grandfather, he wrote about what it was like to do this transatlantic voyage on this wee little ship with his family. And he felt deep fear. He was so scared coming to new country. He was so scared until he saw the lighthouse in Prince Edward Island. And when he saw the lighthouse, he trusted that they were going to figure it out, that they were safe. And when we think about our resiliency and our ability to persist, we need to have that focus. We need to have that steadfast confidence that come what may, we're going to figure it out. Now, a way to do that in psychology is called maxims. We create symbols or words, or we invest in something that really keeps us grounded. And I'll share with you my favorite that I use in my work. And it's the idea that I can do hard things. And I was, ever since I was a little girl, my mother used to tell me that Robyne can do hard things. And I didn't understand what she meant, but she believed in it. And when I was little, as I said, I didn't get it. But when I was a teenager, the idea that I can do hard things actually saved my life. And I can share with you, part of my story is when I was a teenager, I was in a very dark season. By 16, I had already dropped out of high school. I was a terrible student. I hated school. It hated me back. I was navigating major mental health episodes. I was hospitalized many times. I was working with major learning disabilities and addictions. And my parents loved me so hard, but helplessly. They couldn't get me back on track. And in one attempt of an intervention, my family actually moved up north. They moved us from a big city to a small community because they thought that might help. And when I got to that little community, one of the first things I did was get my driver's license. I was in the middle of nowhere, no transit. So I got my driver's license. And I recall having my driver's license for 1 week. And I was driving home one night alone by myself, and a snowstorm rolled in very quickly. And within moments, I lost control of the car. The car went off the road. It went down an embankment, and my vehicle crashed through the ice, and my vehicle sank in the Otonabee River with me trapped inside. Within seconds, my car was completely submerged. I was trapped in a sinking vehicle. What do you do? In that moment, I realized that I wasn't actually feeling afraid. I wasn't feeling scared. In that moment, I realized I was angry. I was angry. I was angry that I could not protect my mother from what was about to happen. And when I started to think about my mom, it was like this emotional echo rang through my bones. And it said, Robyne can do hard things. And in that moment, I made the decision to survive. But wait, I'm wearing winter boots and a winter coat. I'm pinned in a seatbelt. There's no way to open up that car door. What's your next move? What I did was wiggle out of the seatbelt. And I recall taking my fingertips, digging them into the window where it met the door, heaving so hard on that glass that I got it off its track and was able to slide it down the door. And I was able to swim through. Now I got to the other side and I had no idea where to go. No idea which way was up or down. They estimate the water, I was 20 feet underwater. So the only thing that I could think of was to exhale, to let go of all of the breath that I was holding, because I knew my bubbles would rise. And I swam as hard as I could after those bubbles. And I remember thinking I was about to make it. I was about to make it. And then bang, something hits my face. Something's happening with my jaw. I realize my face is hitting the ice. I'm trapped underneath this thick, thick sheet of ice. The car had crashed a hole, but now I was farther downstream. So I swam into the darkness, just trying to find a way to get out. And in the middle of the channel, I was able to get through the ice and I was holding the edge. I was able to get my torso onto this big ice slab. Now that night, there was a gentleman by the name of Joseph Todd. He was just this random guy in his 30s driving home from shift work. And Joseph just happened to see my car tracks in the snow. And he just happened to see, like somehow drove along that road and he just happened to see my body out on the ice in a blizzard. Joseph pulled over his truck. He got wood and chain from his pickup truck and he crawled out onto that ice. He slid out the chain, he wrapped it around my body and he dragged me to shore. Joseph Todd was awarded the Governor General's Award for bravery for risking his life to save a stranger. And when I woke up from the hospital, my mother was there. And one of the things she said was, you know, Robbie, how did you do it? How did you get yourself out of that? And I said to my mom, it's because you told me I could do hard things. And she said, well, that's not really what we had in mind, but I'm glad it worked in your favor. Yeah, no doubt, Mom, me too. Now, the reason I share with you my personal part of my story of resiliency, it's the origin story as to why I study human resiliency. I believe in the human condition. I believe that we are well equipped, that we are able to really show up when we need to, and even in our darkest hours, even when we feel as though all hope is lost, there's a way through. We have to trust. We have to lean into that. And we need help. And whenever I do my work, I do pause to give thanks to Joseph, because no act of bravery should ever be forgotten. And I have spent so much of my time learning about how we can do hard things. And what I've also come upon in my work is each and every one of us, we can do great things. We can do great things. And the last little activity I want to leave with you, this is for you. And I like to think of these are my resilient markers. And I want you to remind yourself, keep top of mind what you're capable of. Remind yourself, I have, list off who's in your corner, who's on your home team, where is your support? I am. I want you to speak truth over your life. I am capable. I'm resilient. I'm doing it. What I hear so often caregivers say is, Robyne, I am tired. I am wobbly and I am weary. Oh my gosh. The amazing thing about the human condition is those can both be true. You can be tired and you find a way through. You can be depleted, but that doesn't mean you're defeated. You find your next right move. We take it moment by moment. Number 3 here is I can. Pretty biased. I can do hard things. But I also would invite you to remind yourself that I can ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help if the weight of the world right now is too heavy. There's no shame in that. Take the time you need to be well. Self-care is not selfish. It is science. All right. It's not science. It's really, when people say to me like, oh, I feel guilty. It's like, it is science. You have to make sure that you have something to give. If you're empty, you can't keep doing what you're doing. You have to fill up your own tank first. So number 4 is I will. I want you to make just one small call to action for yourself. What is that one thing that you can do so you can practice that everyday resiliency, so that way you can continue to show up and hold that precious role of caregiver, but also show up for yourself because you need to. And for all of the caregiving that each and one of you do, I just want to take this moment to say thank you for your service. No one will ever know the scope of what you do, but you do, and it matters. And it is a precious place to be able to do that work. So thank you for your service. And thank you, merci Maguette, for everyone's time. Happy to pass it back to Katie. And again, thank you for everyone's patience with the little hiccup with technology. Thankfully, we're all resilient and we bounce back. So Katie, back to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Robyne, so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom and your personal experiences with resiliency. We so appreciate you taking the time to share this knowledge and wisdom with everyone.